You have 5 minutes to think about this before your family, every one of them, is thrown into Abu Ghraib.
Put it over?
Hard was to work with Dominic when he plays one man plays two person, absolutely different. And I think it was hard task for you to explain how to play him two different personas.
Yes and no. What we did is I decided not to bother him with technically how we would separate the two characters and only concentrate on him creating two separate characters in his head, like as an actor. So we sat down and discussed how to do those things without tricks, without cinematic tricks. And really, it was not that difficult, because I would say to Dominic, I want you to, I think one person should be like this, and the other person should be like that. And he would go, okay, then how do we get there? And I'd say, well, we try voice register. One speaks faster and in a higher pitched voice, and the other speaks lower and a little more like the soldier. One's a soldier, one's steady, he's brave and courageous under fire. So we went through all these things. And when you strip down both characters, you can go, Latif is very still. He speaks very, measured and calm. He's brave. He's a soldier. Doesn't fear death. He's has a good moral center. He moves differently because soldiers move a different way. He's not panicky. Then when we come back to Uday, we'd go, he's fast. He snorts cocaine. He talks fast. His voice is higher. He's always his eyes move. Yes, he's a nervous type of character. So not always, but also then behind that you could say he has a kind of dangerous, lethal, murderous quality, which would always be in the eyes. And if you look at him, his eyes are always moving like that. Uday, because he's. But more than that, what we had to do was give Uday and Latif background for their character. Actors always need background, so we would give two different backgrounds for each different character that Dominic could then draw on. For Uday, we said his father doesn't love him. Saddam doesn't love him because he's a maniac and he can't be trusted. And therefore he can't get his father's affection and is driven mad by this. But he loves his mother. And he sees his mother treated badly by his father. So he's caught up in a father-son-mother relationship, which is kind of driving him mad. Together with that, he's got untold wealth and endless. He can do whatever he likes. But he can never get his father's love, and he's never going to be allowed to run the country. He's not going to be allowed to run Iraq. His father won't let him. And so it kind of drives him crazy. So subconsciously and psychologically, we tried to give Uday a character that Dominic could draw on all the time for his manial thing. With Latif, we kept him very, very simple. We said, look, you're a soldier. You're the son of your father, who's a successful businessman, but a decent, honest man with daughters and sons. You will take over his family business because that's what you do. You will be, you would go into his business and become successful, and you will get married, and you will have children. You will be the kind of almost quintessential perfect man for any woman who the perfect wife would want. Every mother would want their daughter to marry such a son. So. Worlds apart, we gave them psychological backgrounds, and then we just did body language, voice, things, and then we did technically we did prosthetic work, little subtle, special. Latif has a very large, pronounced nose to begin with, and then we remove that when he becomes after surgery. We did, and he's got cheekbones and things, and his teeth are different. We made a big thing about. Uday has pronounced teeth, and we wanted the audience to know that. All that. So then we got into these physical characteristics. You could see which one was which any time on the screen. You didn't have to be confused about which character was there. And after that, the third element of that then became special effects and visual effects, which was beyond Dominic's control, but that was all my control. So it was complicated, but if you worked and just thought about it very carefully, it was like dealing with two actors, not one person. And that's the way we dealt with it all the time. I would talk to Dominic as one man, but I would always talk to the two characters as two separate characters. So.
But when you shoot in one shot two different Dominic, there was some double, I think.
Yes.
And you make a mask or something. How it's?
Well, there's several approaches we use, which is the classic visual effects approach now is you do multiple passes of the camera, or with computer assistance, which so you can lock up the images perfectly in post-production. But sometimes that's not enough. The biggest problem with two actors in the same frame, two characters played by one actor, is when they touch each other. You can't. If they hold on to something, that's very, very complicated. If somebody puts their arm around their neck, and they're both looking at the camera, you have to have another body double, a separate one that's not Dominic, and then you have to digitally remove the head, take it off, and then get Dominic to be in the same setup as that, and take his head and put it on this kind. And so it's what they call head replacement, and it happens quite a lot in these situations. But it is the most complex. It's very tricky because the movements have to be very, very similar. If somebody's doing that, much easier if they're looking at the camera like this, because you can just take one off, cut around the line here, around the collar, but if someone's fighting, it's a huge, huge problem. If there's big action and they're doing things together, so we avoided those. Sorry about my foot. We avoided those situations where we would do very complicated physical interaction between the two of them, and because we had so much work to do with them, and so little time really, we just kept their relationships and their encounters very simple, non-contact. There's about 3 times in the movie where they make contact with each other. There's a gun, he puts it in his hand and all that, and that's a head replacement. There's another one, and there's a couple, 2 or 3, and probably no more than 3. But the rest of it is all visual effects, 1 Dominic, 2 Dominics. When they cross over each other, that's all done in post-production, rotoscopes. Guys get in there and draw around one guy and go around the other like that. So it's quite conventional, but quite time-consuming. But we got very good at it, and we learned a lot off it. So.
No! We must have discipline! Discipline! We must have discipline!
How was that, man?
Excellent.
On that conference, not press conference, but
round table.
Round table. You used to say that you even don't trust documentary movies making about anything happening in our world. At the same time, you don't trust films, movies, entertainment movies.
No.
Why so?
Because all film really is entertainment, all of it, including documentaries. The documentary filmmakers will hate me for saying this because they claim that it is not. But the truth is, and it is an absolute truth, that the minute you cut a piece of film or edit anything, you have changed forever the meaning of the original piece of film. For example, I think there is only possibly, and to my knowledge, one absolutely truthful, and I'm talking about truth, not reality. Reality is different from truth. There's only, to my knowledge, one perfectly honest, truthful film ever made that I can think of that we all know about, which is the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963, where a home video was shot with an unbroken edit, and we've all seen it 1 million times, by a home movie maker. And it's been analysed and exhaustively looked at, and it is a true document of something that happened that we all know has happened, and everybody was able to check that it was true and a real piece of film, and it wasn't fake, not photoshopped, not anything, no actors. And everything from there on in, even television news inflicts an unreality because it has edits and people. If it's Fox News, it has a right-wing, conservative editorial agenda on that news. If it's the BBC, it's different. You never know what accuracy and what you're dealing with now with imagery. And so documentaries, to me, and I love documentaries, I love them very dearly. I've got a great affection for them because I, in some ways, spend a lot of time watching documentaries because you learn a lot from documentaries. But every documentary director and editor are changing and they're making you, they're taking you where they want you to go, just like I do as a director. We manipulate our audience. If Werner Herzog makes a documentary about a man being killed by a grizzly bear, and another documentary maker was to take different footage and make a different, so they could make two entirely different stories out of the same footage, which tells me that really it's always the point of view of the filmmaker, not the truth of the image that you're watching. So that's what I was referring to the other day in terms of terrorism and the round table. I would rather make dramatic film and use real events and dramatize those events and turn them so an audience gets an emotional and physical sense of a real world, but through a reconstruction of events. If I was doing a film about Beslan, I would find characters. I would turn them into characters that we knew and had some empathy with and felt them. I would create the whole situation. The entire situation of Beslan would unfold, and we would have real characters moving through there. But it would not be a real story. It would be the illusion of a truth that I would be giving to an audience. And Devil's Double is very much like that. It is not truthful and it is not real, but it has the appearance of reality because I have documentary footage in the film, and Saddam is there, and Uday existed, Saddam existed, but that's where our reality stops because we don't know what they said, what they did, what clothes they wore, what cars they drove really, and so we're taking huge dramatic license with things. And my view when I said the other day at the round table was exactly that I was, it's not that I don't trust film, I don't want to, I am not, the truth of what something is, you will never find out from watching a film, either dramatic or a documentary or even the news. You have to seek your own truth in these things. How you do that is entirely up to you, but I take things, I'm skeptical of all images. That doesn't mean to say I can't watch a film like JFK, which I admire enormously, and that Oliver Stone's truth of that film is what he wanted me to believe, and I love it. It's fantastic. But it's I don't sit there and go, wow, this is the real truthful story of the assassination of Kennedy. Of course it's not. But that's fine. That's drama. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can do one more. Yeah. Can I get some water or something? You would? Yeah. Thank you. Sometime. Yeah. Okay.
But this movie was based on some memories.
Yes.
But do you believe in things that used to be written in these memories?
Not really at all. This is not a criticism of what was written. But when it comes to biographies, I don't like biographies and biopics about real individuals. I'm not attracted to them because they're never really real. But the filmmakers are trying to tell you that they are real. Johnny Cash movie, for example. Yeah, fine, a great movie, love it. But I don't think it's real. It's a film with Joaquin Phoenix playing Johnny Cash. Great, I love it. But my movie is like that. I'm not trying to tell a real story. It is the story based on the story that Latif Yahia wrote as his own autobiography. But I am very suspicious of the autobiography because, especially if it cannot be checked. I don't mind autobiographical details, but if they can be cross-checked by other people, fine, because then we can get to the bottom of whether something is true or not. But nobody can check Latif's life story and find out whether it's true or not. So I was not there to make a film to make Latif into to justify his version of events. And I made it very clear to him that I wasn't going to do that either, in that he may be telling us lies, he may be telling us the truth, but it's not my job to get to the bottom of that. He gave us the opportunity to actually create a story, to look at a criminal regime that runs a country from the inside, from the point of view of an observer inside there. And I was fascinated with that. And I told him, I said, look, we're going to make this up. We're going to take some of your stuff, but we're going to use it, but I don't care whether it's true or not. I'm making actually essentially a work of fiction, but it feels real, so it's a trick on the audience. But I don't want to get too much into that thing about Latif's autobiography, but it is, I read it, and then I said, yeah, okay, I'll use some things and I won't use others, but I don't believe in any of it, because I just don't believe I know what I want to believe about any of it, yeah? It's just, I didn't want to get caught up in that.
I know that you used to look for financial, for money for this film about 8 years, yeah?
No. It came to my knowledge in 2006, 5 years ago. But I think the filmmakers had been around maybe 2 years before that, looking for a director, looking for money, whatever. They had some money in 2006, then it all fell apart. 2 years, then it came back in 2008 with the current financiers from Belgium.
I've heard that Danny Boyle was attached.
Yes, he was. Attached. My agent is the same. He represents Danny Boyle and me. So when Danny pulled out, he immediately just found another one of his clients. He said, in some ways, I only found this out recently. Only at Sundance this year, my agent said, Danny was thinking of doing this, and I said, well, I'm glad he didn't, because it's a funny thing that. But I don't know what the process was. I don't know why Danny didn't do it. It could have been budgets. It could have been anything. I didn't ask, and I didn't care. But yes, he was attached to it for a while. Yeah.
While this Gulf War was, I think it was the first war alive on air.
Yes.
But you almost didn't show any American activity.
Right, very deliberately, and I'll tell you why. I actually am very political, in my own personal life. I follow political events extremely closely, and I pride myself on knowing what truths I want to know about who invades a country and for what reasons. I've long been a critic of American involvement in anything like the Middle East, going back to Reagan and Lebanon, but especially when it came to in Gulf War I, there's a lot of unanswered questions about why the invasion happened when it seemed like the Americans gave a green light to Saddam that they would not be offended if he invaded Kuwait. There is a lot of dubious material around that. We know that. But it looks like now, after 2003 and George Bush Jr., his blatant aggression on Iraq, which is totally unjustifiable, it now looks like 1991 Gulf War, George Bush Sr. is the good guy. He's the just war. This is the invasion that can't be touched because it was a good thing. All of those things that I feel about that, I didn't want to put in this movie because it would have made it a political film, and I didn't want to make it a political film and start beating people over the head with my politics. So I decided to strip out all of the politics entirely from the film and make it about the Hussein family and the regime. But I also wanted at the same time to just remind everybody about Gulf War I and how it came about, and with the sheer overwhelming firepower. And you're right, the first really big televised CNN war. It made CNN's career, and we were now in our living rooms watching this live war. That's why I was doing my version of kind of internal documentary pieces in the film. But I also decided to blur the line of reality by putting music over the documentary pieces, so that it became almost Apocalypse Now abstraction sort of filmmaking, so that it once again didn't feel real, but the images you remember. We all remember those images, and we go, I remember that, I remember these things, and so this is real. Now we're in reality. So I was really playing around with the viewer's perception of realities and truths like with that stuff. But no, in short answer is I wanted to keep all the politics out of it. And but politically, my one thing is the first person you ever see on the invasion of Iraq, Gulf War I, is Dick Cheney. And that was very deliberate because he was there in the second one too. So.
Well, and why do you think it's so hard to...
yeah, that's one. Yeah.
Why do you think it's so hard to find money to make a film about terrorism?
Because it's box office poison. It's toxic, it's radioactive, nobody wants to go near it. You have to have something like this. This was a risk. This is a huge political gamble to do a story about the awful Hussein regime, you know, where they were supposed to be evil, the villains, the nasty guy. But the only way that it can work is if you have a heroic character, somebody that we can relate to, who is not one of them. If I was to make a film about terrorism, I would automatically have to have somebody who was an innocent or a person that you could tell a story through their eyes somehow. But what you cannot do is make the terrorists the heroes of the story. I have not seen Carlos, the Jackal movie, but I don't believe he comes across as heroic. I don't think they would try and make a film like that. But it's a very dangerous concept to take Bader Meinhof, Carlos, these type of characters, and turn them into heroes. And you cannot take any Islamic terrorism or such, and there is no access for us as an audience. These are people that just want to destroy us. Nobody will want to pay and go and see that movie. 20 people will go and see it. No producer will finance it. Nobody will, in their right minds, will want to. It's a very, very brave producer that wants to do that. Paul Bruhl's produced this movie, which is not about terrorism, but it's a very dangerous story. He produced it because he liked the story. He personally wanted us to make it, and he was very happy to personally finance it all himself with his Belgian tax shelter company, for which I really applaud him, because it means that he was just a brave individual who didn't care about what anyone else thought and financed it himself. But the producers, the other producers, had a terrible time finding money for this because they were going through conventional sources, and all those conventional sources would all shut down and not make the film eventually because of various reasons. So it is very difficult to make these stories, and usually they're, if the Americans make them, they're from the perspective of heroic American soldiers, fighting for freedom, and we all get a bit tired of that. I much prefer a more European version of events. The Europeans, and by implication maybe the British can be included in that, but the French, the Germans, the Italians, the British, much better at political analysis on dramatic film in these type of areas, and so I've always enjoyed that out of European film, and so that's why I came and made, in a lot of ways it was great shooting this film in Europe, because it was Malta, Jordan, Belgium, post-production here, there, actors from, but no American studio telling us what to do and cutting lines and saying this, and it can be done. You can make a film about anything. It was interesting at the terrorism round table the other day. I could easily take a film about Moscow theater or Beslan or something, and and if I was Russian, and I could craft up a story, and I could make it really quite compelling, I think. But would people finance it? Would we struggle to get it financed and made? Who would stop it? There would be unseen forces and all sorts of strange people would come up. We would find it very difficult to get it made, and that would be the politics of the situation coming up against us to do that. It's not impossible, but very hard. Box office poison. Maybe mine's the first film that is not box office poison, but I don't know. We'll see.
I will never let you go. I will never let you go.
The Devil's Double, rated R. In select theaters July 29th.